Welcome to Fat Science. I'm Mark Wright, along with Andrea Taylor and Dr. Emily Cooper. I would like to do a drum roll, but my drum sets are 10 feet away from me.
Oh,
This is the 100th episode of the podcast Fat Science. Can you guys believe this day has come?
No.
it's amazing.
Yes, but no.
And we have dozens of people from all over the world who've joined us. It is just after 9 o'clock Pacific time, but some of you are all over the place. This is going to be such a fun episode, celebrating you, the listener, and also allowing you to ask Dr. Cooper a question. So consider this kind of a live mailbag session of Fat Science. But I'd love to first turn the microphone over to you, Dr. Cooper. This started when I think you called me and said, "Hey, I've been wanting to do a podcast for a long time. Why don't you take it from there and just explain how this whole thing started?"
Yeah, I did. I called you. I was thinking of both you and Andrea teaming up with me on this project to try to get the message out to develop more awareness about metabolic science and the science behind obesity and diabetes, because there's just so much misinformation out there. And so I really wanted to tackle it. And the whole thing, started many years ago, decades ago, actually, because it was decades ago that I started applying metabolic science into my preventive medicine practice. And my thought originally was to really help people with diabetes, because there was a lot of information at the time showing that improving metabolic health was just the key to reducing the risks of diabetes and things like that. And then in the course of things, people came to me with all kinds of problems, like ranging from just weight issues, energy issues, athletic issues, diabetes, and it took a while for the core group that I really wanted to work with to kind of filter in and start coming in. But as I was doing all of this, and this was more than 20 years ago, I started noticing that just everything we've been told about obesity and even diabetes, a lot of what we've been told about it is just not backed up by science. And it's just accepted by the public and the healthcare professionals as, being true. And so a lot of what we were telling patients was information that was actually potentially going to make their problem worse. And it took me a long time to realize that, because I was also telling the patients to do these things that I was trained to say and do. And because I was so scientifically oriented, I had this high-tech equipment that could measure your metabolism, and I started noticing these bizarre things. So that's when I started measuring like leptin. And this was way back. I kept calling the LabCorp. Can we measure this yet? No, but soon, and I had a whole list of things. And then 2005, we were able to measure leptin. And shortly after that, other hormones, adiponectin, and then the neurotransmitters, neuropeptide Y. So for many, years, we've been able to measure these things, and pairing that data with the research data on metabolism and what influences our metabolic rate, our reproductive hormones, our body weight, our energy expenditure, I saw that there are reasons why people are having these problems. And that led to finding strategies to help patients really kind of get their problems addressed more effectively than telling people the standard calorie in, calorie out garbage, I should say. So I thought, oh, this is great. I've got to tell everyone. I try to talk to people. And some people were really open. Like I was so fortunate. There was a local endocrinologist who, since then she passed away, but she's an amazing doctor. And she was Harvard trained and would tell me, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because my professors in school are the publishers of, they're listed on this publication, this peer-reviewed journal article, and yet they didn't teach us any of this in med school. So it was really exciting, with all of that in the beginning, and thinking I could just share a lot of this information. And my patients were great. They were a team, like, yes, let's share our information. We were all hyped up about it, but we got a lot of pushback. And so that's why things have taken a long time. But what's been great is just building on that science over the years and building a data bank of long-term patients. I mean, some of the people even in this audience probably are some of our long-term patients that have really put a lot of time and effort into this. And now we're at a turning point where the public is willing to listen and look at these things and even have a conversation. And along the way, Andrea always told me, don't worry, it'll happen. The more people talk about it, even if they're saying the wrong things, it will open the doors to real communication. And that was the whole point of why we set up our nonprofit, the Diabetes Institute. It was to get the conversation going, to get people away from doing things that might harm their metabolism and start looking for other more scientific answers and improve that access to that type of care. So the podcast timing is just great because it's at a time where we feel now we don't have to tiptoe as much around these topics because it's more accepted.
Yeah.
So that's why we're bringing, Andrea in with the humor, and Andrea's the one that long ago kept reassuring me and telling me this was more than 10 years ago that Andrea was telling me just, don't sound so angry. Just try to put yourself in other people's shoes. They think that don't make them feel like they should know these things. Be a little bit more humble. And anyway, I think her advice helped a lot. And Mark is a real straight shooter. So I think the combination of the three of us with Mark keeping us on task is working out. And we just want to keep tackling these topics. And, I don't claim to know everything, obviously. It's kind of, I've studied this area a lot. And I can tell you, I don't know very much compared to how much there is to know. So I do my best. But my main thing is I'm not a researcher, I'm a clinician. And what I'm trying to do is take the research data and put it into practical use. Because if you can't take that data and make it into something practical that helps patients, it's really not something that a clinician is going to benefit from or their patients. And so I've taken a lot of the information that I've seen in multiple different areas and tried to put it together into a metabolic logic, and then it's really paid off. I really feel like it does work. And so you don't have to know every detail about every molecular reaction and every little department. That's really missing the point. We need to see the overarching picture of metabolism and apply that clinically to help patients. And so,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a long story of how I got here.
And occasionally people will ask, how does Andrea know Dr. Cooper, and how did you get involved? So their mothers, Andrea's mother and Dr. Cooper's mother, were best friends back in New York. So these two have known each other literally since they were toddlers,
Mhm.
and they grew up together. And then Andrea, her career was in marketing. She's served in some very, very high levels in some media corporations in terms of a marketer, and that's why Dr. Cooper, who kindly said she got put back, but was literally being ridiculed by the medical community in the beginning.
Mhm.
That's when she reached out to Andrea and said, "Look, I'm struggling. What can I do?" And so Andrea took her marketing and communications expertise and brought that to the table. And it has worked. And I think the real wisdom there is that sometimes that stuff takes time, especially when you're ahead of the curve. Um,
Yeah.
I was a broadcaster. My role in all this, I'm a patient of Dr. Cooper, as Andrea is. I was a television broadcaster for 35 years and got to know Dr. Cooper when we did a Get Fit segment for the morning news and thought it would be just this fun little thing. And that's when she said, Mark, I'm pretty sure you have metabolic syndrome. And I said, what's that? And that's how I became her patient. So, Andrea, just a few words from you before we launch into the questions. What's been the most satisfying thing about the podcast for you over the past, I guess it's going to be almost 2 years in
I
October
know, it's
since we
crazy to
launched?
me. We started the whole podcast. It was just like, well, let's see. Everybody's starting to do podcasts. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can make this work. And we started it. We've done really no marketing, no outreach, and people started listening. It started getting popular all over the world, which is cuckoo crazy to me. And we we do kind of have fun doing it. So, and there seems to be an endless thing of topics. And I don't know. I love that what I think I love the most and what is the most satisfying about it is that people keep talking about it and I love that people say, oh, that really helped me. That really was my problem. And I feel like there are people that are just like me who a long time ago were like, I'm broken. There's something really wrong with my metabolism. I don't know. There's something really not right. Like I keep dieting and nothing's happening. And like now with all the GLP-1 drugs that are out, people are wondering, well, how do I use these? What's the real story? Because so many doctors are out there not really prescribing them properly and calling them diet drugs, which I hate. And I think that this podcast really can help a lot of people understand what the real story is because Dr. Cooper is really a leading expert in how to understand how your metabolism works and how it affects more than just your weight and how it affects your health. And I think that that's a really big difference. And I think that we can actually inform some people about things. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And I think, what I've gotten out of this, just not only just from benefiting from Dr. Cooper's professional expertise. I mean, gosh, 12 years ago, Dr. Cooper, I was 40 pounds heavier.
Right.
I had pre-diabetes. I was high cholesterol, high blood pressure, high everything. And over that time, you've really squared around my health, and I'm
Both
sure
of
that,
us.
yeah, I'm
Yes.
sure that you've added years to my life, which I have a new little grandson, and I want to be around as long as I can for him. But I love Dr. Cooper's humility. When you meet a really smart person, they will tell you, yeah, I don't really know everything about this topic. And the smarter you get, the more you realize how much you don't know. And I love Dr. Cooper's humility. I love Andrea's honesty. And I think the combination of all of us, it's just been a joy
Right.
to be
I think
part of this.
both of our health, Mark and my health, is so different. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I was definitely inside a mess. And, like obviously the physical is so different. I mean, I've definitely shrunk, obviously, by like 200 pounds is totally a different Andrea,
Mm,
but inside is really a different Andrea. So
yeah.
that I think is way more important. I mean, I love having smaller clothes, that's great. But the inside is really what's way more important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was fun. Let's jump right in. So when we start to introduce you, please come off mute and you can ask Dr. Cooper your question. Jennifer from Mercer
Yeah,
Island, which
yeah,
is
she's our first.
she's our first one. Jennifer, go ahead and ask Dr. Cooper your question, please.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my question. I'm a long-term patient of Dr. Cooper's, and I'm so grateful for your care. And I feel so much better over the years. And I'm a fan of the podcast, so thank you so much. My question is, a lot of my friends and I have kids on the GLP-1s, and I'm on one, and we're just so grateful for the impact they've had. But we're wondering if there's a long-term consequence for future pregnancies. So if our teenagers and 20-year-olds, if they'll have fertility issues or birth defect issues or whatever, do you have any concerns about the long-term effect for that specific population?
Thanks for that question, Jennifer. Nice to see you. I don't have concerns because I definitely don't have concerns about pregnancy and fertility risk from being on a GLP-1 because as we'll come to find in the next many years that the GLP-1s are advantageous when it comes to fertility because if you think about it, metabolic dysfunction impairs fertility in both males and females. And so if the GLP-1 is helping restore a more normal metabolic profile, healthier metabolism, then it's enhancing your chances of fertility. And if it's part of a long-term plan, even if in the future you're tapering off because you don't need it anymore, which does happen for some people, especially young people, then having been on it could have been a key point in improving your chances of fertility in the future. So I think that would be almost the opposite. And then as far as any birth defects and things like that go, these meds don't stay in your system or alter anything with your natural system. So there wouldn't be a chance that if you're not on the GLP-1 during a pregnancy, that somehow having been on it in the remote past would have affected your risk of birth defects. So that And that's similar with most drugs. So I don't see any concern with that. And as far as taking them during pregnancy, it's not advised, but there are some observational reports now, studies being done in people who had to stay on them for reasons like diabetes and other things, where they're collecting that data. And so far, the early data looks very good in terms of safety. So they still don't know for sure. So it's still not recommended during pregnancy.
Our next question is from Mar in Western New York.
Hello. I
Hi.
feel like I'm meeting my friends because I listen to you when I'm driving, and I've been like mainlining the podcast since February. So I feel like you guys have been driving with me for the whole year.
Oh, I hope we did good directions.
You did. I want to say a special thank you to you, Andrea, because we have a very similar path. So I feel like you're my older sister out there, and I'm like following your journey. And I also want to say thank you, Dr. Cooper, for always reminding us that it's not our fault and we're not alone. Just you repeating that a lot has been like a really good mantra. So thank you for that.
Totally.
Dr. Cooper, you've mentioned a couple of times about Andrea's labs, and thank you, Andrea, for being so open and vulnerable to share your labs with us. That her leptin levels.
I'll send you a photocopy.
Her leptin levels indicated that she would have been like 89 pounds and starving when actually she had excess weight. So for my story, I've been on Zepbound since April. I've lost 35 pounds. I went from 397 to 362. And this entire time, I've been eating more food than I've eaten probably since I was 5 years old. Same as Andrea, diets worked until they didn't. And I started doing mechanical eating. I use a meal reminder app on my phone. So when it dings, I go and feed the beast, regardless of what I'm doing. My fasting glucose went from 114 in January to 91. I just got it measured, and I'm waiting for my very first leptin reading. I asked my rheumatologist to add it to my blood panel. So I'm going to get the results for the first time. So I was wondering if I have a similar path to Andrea and I'm showing that leptin resistance, am I going to see a high number that I want to come down to go lower, or I'm going to see a low number that we need to come higher? What should I be looking at in that panel?
That's such a great question. And thank you so much for listening and supporting us. Well, leptin is so interesting. Now, one question I have, do you know if it was LabCorp or Quest?
So my rheumatologist requested the leptin total plasma test from Quest Diagnostics.
Good. Okay. Just because I won't want to say anything negative about LabCorp, but
Quest.
there are certain tests that they should be sent to a reference lab because they're difficult to run, and some labs try to run them in-house and they're not reliable results. But Quest, actually, this is one that they run reliably. So the number, so first of all, that means you can trust the number that you get back. And when you get it back, the report will not be easy to read in terms of, is this normal? Is this high? Is it low? Because it just has like, if your BMI is this, it should be in this huge range. We actually use a formula that's been validated in people with high body weight only. So not people with normal weight, but high body weight, to dial in kind of where it really should be. And then we always look at the leptin as a percent of that target leptin that it is, based on your BMI, basically. So it's confusing a little. But, I could tell you if it's like under 20, that's low for someone with a high weight. And so if it's not, then that's a good thing. That means that all of your fueling and everything you're doing to try to not be on a diet anymore is helping your leptin recover. But leptin resistance, so you can have leptin insufficiency, meaning low or suppressed leptin, low leptin levels. And that can be a problem because then your brain is seeing your body weight as being much lower than it really is. And so it may be going through all of these steps to try to conserve energy to counteract that. So if it's low, it is not good. But it could also be at a normal level or elevated, but not be signaling correctly to the brain. That's what leptin resistance is. So there's either leptin suppression or leptin resistance. And you can have both too, because it could be that the level is just a little lower than it should be, but high enough to make your brain realize your weight's high, but your brain not responding to it also. So it could be a little suppressed from the diets, plus your brain's resistant. The thing that causes the resistance is usually high ghrelin levels. And so that would be another one thing to try to see if you could get Quest to run a ghrelin. They've cut us off here in in
Yeah,
our
they
area.
weren't offering it. The
Yeah,
lab, my rheumatologist gave me the code for it, and the
Yeah.
phlebotomist couldn't find it in the system.
yeah.
It like wasn't coming up.
Well, you can keep bugging them and say you can get it. You just need to like find the code. So if you bug them for it, I mean, we have a good relationship with InterScience Institute, which is in California, Southern California, and it's a reference lab for the country. And they're a wonderful lab, and they allow us to direct ship to them some of these samples. But that's where Quest sends a lot of their tests. So you could keep trying to push it to see. I really want to get my ghrelin because they are able to do it, but they feel like it's not a moneymaker for them. But aside from all that, we're spending a lot of time on that. But so if there's leptin resistance or low leptin, the outcome is kind of similar anyway. It's really that you don't see the influence of leptin in the rest of your endocrine system as signaling correctly. So you look at things like, or your doctor would look at things like your TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone, your ACTH, which is the cortisol stimulating hormone, your LH, which is your estrogen stimulating, so all those stimulating hormones from the pituitary gland would be suppressed sometimes if the leptin signal is not functioning right. So, but there is no medication for leptin. So it boils down to this balance. High famine signals, low security signals causes the elevated weight. So you've got to do something to improve the security signals, which is your eating mechanically, sleeping well, fueling exercise, medications like the GLP-1, GIP, to say, no, we're secure. And also separately trying to knock down the famine signals, which is a lot of the same lifestyle strategies. Medication wise, there's no clinical data, like hardcore research type data on how much these different meds reduce the what are called orexogens, the famine signals, but clinically we do see that they do. So anyway, I think getting a baseline and then you could always send us a message and we can maybe give you the formula that we use so that you could see which direction it is.
Yeah. Mar, that's such a good question. And it really speaks to, doesn't it, Dr. Cooper, that a level of a hormone is one thing, but the other component is, does your brain see it, right?
Right.
On many different levels.
And over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also it tells you why would you prescribe medication, like a GLP-1 or GIP, when you're telling someone to go on a diet, which lowers their natural GIP and GLP-1. Diets lower those things, just like they lower leptin. And so you're lowering a lot of your security signals with the diet. At the same time, you're trying to take a medicine that's supposedly enhancing the security. So it doesn't really make sense to do that timing.
Yeah.
That's a great question. All right. Julie from Pittsburgh has a question. And this is a really great question. Julie, go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is I'm fangirling super hard over here. You guys also accompany me on my commute, so this is so exciting. My question is kind of general. I've been on Zepbound since mid-April of this year, and I've had good success. And some people have kind of started to comment you look amazing or things like that, which, can bring up a whole complex host of emotions. And luckily, everyone I've chosen to tell in my own life has been kind of supportive. But online, I see a lot of experiences from other people where people say really negative things. So I was nervous to tell the first few people that I did tell because I thought they would have a negative response. And luckily, that wasn't the case. But it was kind of a general question that I think probably a lot of people have is, I guess, Dr. Cooper, how do you counsel your patients to approach that? But then in general, for Andrea and Mark, I mean, I assume you disclose, considering you have a podcast, that's a pretty public way to share. But just curious kind of what thoughts went into it and how you kind of approached it. Thank you.
I'll go first just for a sec, and then Andrea and Mark should really answer. But my little thing to say is it's just is it really anyone's business, our medical history? Like, what if you were on chemotherapy or you're on, and you don't really want to tell people about your cancer treatment necessarily because they're not that close to you? Or, so I guess who you would share your medical information with, to me, is a personal choice. And you shouldn't feel obligated to tell anyone or share your medical information with anyone. I mean, even when we fill out forms for like students at school or people at work, we never say why they need the medical. It's for medical reasons. And some of our patients I know who've told me what they say is they say, "Oh, I found out that my metabolism, I had metabolic problems, and I'm working with a metabolic doctor right now, and it's straightening it out." It's just vague. But is it really people's business? Is what I want to know. So, what do you guys think, Andrea and Mark?
Well, everyone thinks your ass is public. Look, everyone thinks your body is a public thing. So and they all want to know what you've done because they want to do it. And the whole thing about all the GLP-1 drugs is on top of everybody's mind. So for me, just also because like as it was happening in the early times, nobody really noticed because there was so much to lose. So nobody really noticed in the beginning, but like in the past maybe year or so, it's much more dramatic. So people notice. So I always tell them, I say thank you to Dr. Cooper and to medical science and to the lovely invention of drugs. And my body is all science and all drugs and no diets at all. And they're like, "Oh, it must be so difficult for you." I'm like, "No, the old way was the most difficult way. When I was starving myself, that was hard. This is the easiest thing in the world. It's all drugs and it's all science and it's all about metabolism. It has nothing to do." I said, "My old metabolism, that was the messed up thing. And it was broken and it was messed up and there was something wrong with me. And it was a medical problem. And these drugs are not about diets and it's not a diet drug. This is about metabolism and the drugs should be called metabolic drugs. And we need to change the discussion. There's something wrong with people. And I wish they wouldn't call them diet drugs. I always say that. And this will change your life. So I like to tell people and I tell everybody and I'm like, and anybody who I know has a problem and would, want to engage in the discussion, I'm like, this will change your life and it will literally free you from everything that has been like weighing you down literally forever and will just make you feel so much better inside, outside, your brain. Like it will just change it. And if you work with the right person, it will just make you happy.
Yeah. And, Dr. Cooper always says weight is not the problem, it's a symptom of an
Right.
underlying problem.
Exactly.
And I've heard a lot of stand-up comics, like Jim Gaffigan is one of my favorite comics. He's on GLP-1s now, and he's done a bunch of bits on this. There's also this holdover bias that I think is completely
Wrong.
unfair, that like you're taking the easy way out because you haven't tried hard enough. And we all know, I mean,
I tried.
Gina's episode when she was starving herself and working out 4 hours a day and
Yeah.
she's still gaining weight. So she wasn't trying hard. I mean,
Right.
And
so
That was hard.
yeah,
Anna, the Iron Man.
yeah, triathlete. And so that bias is leftover old thinking. And that's why I just say, look, I was pre-diabetic. I was in terrible medical shape by every metric, and this drug has reversed it. So
Right. I like to say,
what's to debate?
would you have bias against somebody for taking a drug for cancer or for blood pressure or something like that? No.
Yeah.
This is a drug that was created to help people who have a problem. And so many people have a medical problem. Like, why would you say that this is the easy way out, or that why would you question, like if you have a headache, you take an aspirin. If you have something wrong with you, you get a drug to help you. And if you can take that drug, why wouldn't you want to take something that's available to fix something wrong with you?
The point
Like
is
this is a
that,
medical problem.
yeah, I mean, I think we have a long way to go because doctors, I still see them and I try to call them out. I still see them kind of in this mode that somehow these meds are just helping people stay on a diet.
Yes.
And, if that is crazy, but I see a little bit more pushback now from other doctors and scientists coming back at that. So it's going to take a long time to change that, honestly.
Right. A
But
generation.
I also want to say one thing. These drugs are not a miracle for everyone. So if there's
Oh, you're
people
right.
listening
You're right.
that are
You're right.
not having these miraculous results or even any
Right.
kind
And
of
it doesn't happen as fast. Like literally for me,
right.
it didn't happen as fast. I
Yeah.
mean, it,
And there's some people though that really are stuck, and so we don't want them to feel also like, "Ooh, this is great, this is nirvana." It's not for a
right.
lot of people, and as Andrea said, it takes a long time. You have to have.
It,
We have
look,
that episode about takes a little patience.
right. I mean, look, for me, it's been what, 12 years, 13 years?
Mhm.
Jennifer, you're up next.
Hi there. I'm so sorry about that.
That's
Having a little
okay.
technical difficulties
That's all
there.
right. We
All
all do.
right.
None of us are
Well,
experts.
I know that everyone is saying this. I adore all of you. You've been a
Oh,
lifeline. I found out through Reddit, a Reddit Zetbound group about the podcast is how I learned about you all. And
Oh,
I
wow.
just appreciate you so much. So I kind of have a twofold question, if that's okay. I was on Wegovy for about a year and it was wonderful. I lost about 40 pounds and then my weight loss just completely stalled for like 3 months. And I have a very well meaning doctor, not super knowledgeable. So it's kind of a shot in the dark like, hey, let's try Zepbound. So she quickly ramped me up through the dosages of Zepbound. In the beginning, I had wonderful energy when I switched to Zepbound because I had really bad lethargy, just really lethargic on the Wegovy. That was probably my number one complaint about Wegovy. I enjoy exercise. I just couldn't. I was so tired after work. So Zepbound, I started out really great, but I developed in probably the third month horrible injection site reaction. And I've been reading about this online. It started out one day, it looked like a mosquito bite. Then with each week with my injection, it was just terrible. It was massive welt. I mean, red hot. I have to use an ice pack. It lasts 5 to 6 days and starts to go away just about in time for me to have my injection again. I don't know. Should I be concerned about this? I have no other problems, no breathing issues, nothing else at all. It's just injection site. I've tried letting it sit out for an hour of the fridge. I read that can help. That has made no difference for me. So I'm just curious about that. And then secondly,
And make it quick if you would, Jennifer.
Sorry.
Okay.
My corporation just got bought out. We're scared our insurance is changing. Do I need to worry if all of a sudden I can't take my GLP-1 anymore if I can't afford it, if it goes to $1,400 a month? Is that a worry? So sorry. There you go.
No,
There it
it's all
is.
good.
that's okay. Well, the injection site reactions are a problem if they get to be like what you're describing. I mean, the little small ones, we usually have people put like hydrocortisone, and make sure the needle is really perpendicular because if it's angled, you get more of that. And so, those, if it's getting to the point of a large welt, you really need to have your doctor look at that. And they probably will say you can't continue to take this medicine because you're reacting too strongly to something in this material. So you may have to switch just based on that. But it isn't a good idea to suddenly stop. It's not dangerous to suddenly stop a GLP-1, but it's not medically a good idea because you're treating, as Andrea said, you're treating a medical condition. So it'd be like if you were on blood pressure medicine that finally brought your blood pressure under control, then you suddenly stop it, your blood pressure is going to get really high. Versus if you're at a point where everything is stabilized and you really are at a point where it's ready to be tapered gradually, that's a different story. Then you can safely taper over a long period of time while monitoring and be more successful at preventing any kind of rebound of the condition. So that's just my thoughts on both of those.
Okay.
And then the insurance thing,
question.
I would say let's look into Canada.
Or, you have to look, actually, it can be almost equally as good these days because there's tariff added on
I didn't
now.
think of that.
But it can be equally as good with Lilly Direct or NovoCare Pharmacy now.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an email from the Canadian pharmacy that I use for one of my drugs, and they said because of the tariffs from the current administration, they were going to be adding
Oh,
a $200 surcharge on every shipment.
oh my
Um,
God.
so it's radically increasing the cost of that stuff. Jennifer, that's a great question. Thank you so much for the kind
Thank you,
words and for
Jennifer.
listening. All right, Anne from Washington, D.C. is our next question, asking about compounding pharmacies. Anne.
Yeah, I know in the past you've been sort of critical of people getting their drugs through compounding pharmacies. Unfortunately, I don't have a choice because I was on Wegovy through insurance, and as of January, they just stopped covering it, and I couldn't afford to pay $1,300 a month. And so I've gone through one of the big online telehealth companies. Um, but I'm interested in switching from semaglutide to tirzepatide at some point when I run out. Anyway, I guess my question was, I know that you kind of don't approve of it, but like I'm sure a lot of people who listen to the podcast are doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And can you give us some kind of reassurance or something?
Well, the reason why I know that I get a lot of pushback about this and people kind of right away get so upset. But we've never had any medication that has suddenly gone from a new brand medication to a compounded medicine. It's never in history happened. What you have typically are when medications become generic and they have an FDA approved generic supply, that then can be compounded to something, and doctors really trust that process because it's basically been through a lot more testing and FDA scrutiny at that point. And so I use compounded medication for my patients for different things. It's just this group of medications that just even practically before they're even FDA approved, they've got the compounded versions. And in some cases, they have it in forms that's never been FDA tested, like these lozenges. And, it has never been tested that way. So like an injectable medicine that now you can take in a sublingual pill. I mean, they're selling these things in all kinds of forms that have never been tested. And there's no evidence about the cold chain, because if you have a drug, a brand drug, they're held to so much scrutiny by the FDA to prove that they're doing things according to the way the drug is designed to be used, manufactured that way, handled that way in the shipping process. So even before the compounding pharmacy receives it, do they have proof of the cold chain being intact? And do they have proof that in their hands it's gone through the cold chain process? Do they have, so this is what early on I asked several reputable pharmacies to provide a lot of that information. I never got anything from any of them. So it's just an unusual situation. So doctors, for good reasons, are cautious about it. And I have seen patients in my practice that have done the compounded ones and came in and we clearly found issues. Mainly it was things like they thought they were taking a specific dose, but it turned out it wasn't that dose because of the labeling was really odd, or it seemed to lose its strength quickly. There are all kinds of variable results. So I try to, now that we have Lilly Direct and NovoCare Pharmacy trying to step up with these plans, even on Medicare, for Medicare patients too, where Medicare used to be excluded from a lot of these coupons. Now Medicare patients have access to all this too. And GoodRx now has a program in place for the Novo Nordisk meds too. So the prices have come down for the brand. I know it's still really expensive. And we've worked with the Canadian pharmacies to try to extend the use of the medication, by extending the going through a higher concentration medication and extending it out over several months instead of 1 month. And that saves a lot of cost. And so far, the tariffs, even though they're threatening the $200, they're only charging the $40 right now. But it is a real problem. The whole thing is a disaster, but I hate to have people turn to something that we just don't know about because it may be safer to not do that or spend the extra $200 a month, which is usually the difference between the NovoCare and Lilly versus a compounded form. But I get it. So I think the only thing you can do if you're using a compounded version is really ask these questions. Can you show me proof of the cold chain, proof of, the content of what is in this? Make sure it's in the same form as the prescription drug is. I mean, the brand name drug, not in a lozenge when it was tested as an injection, et cetera. But yeah, I don't endorse it. And right now, I don't have any patients that we've never prescribed compounded GLP-1 or GIP for any of our patients. I have, as I say, I do prescribe compounded drugs for our patients because often they need the compounded is great because they need a lower dose or they need something without the dyes that are in the typical generic form of the medication. And so it's been really good to be able to offer compounded medication to some patients. But this is one category that I know a lot of doctors, most doctors are not very comfortable with it. I don't think it's necessarily dangerous, but how do we know? We just don't know.
I know it's a risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe check out those other programs and see if it's beneficial.
They could work out. And then also they're trying to add more indications. So, how they've added the obstructive sleep apnea for Zepbound, and then they've added now the MASLD or MASH, I should say, MASH, the liver fat, also for the Wegovy. And so the more indications you have, your doctor has more things to work with to try to force your insurance to cover. And with Wegovy, even for Medicare patients, you can get that covered, but you have to have had a heart attack or a stroke. So if you have had a heart attack or stroke, it can be covered.
Whoa.
And for Zepbound, for Medicare, if you have sleep
Sadly, I have not.
Yeah.
Darn it.
They'll cover it when you get really,
listen,
really sick.
Listen, I hear you, and I'm furious too, because just yesterday I had this patient who it was unbelievable. She could not afford it because she has genetic obesity in her family. All her kids require meds, her husband, everything. And her insurance for a company she's worked for so long could opt in, but they aren't. And it caused her to have to go off her meds. And she always had prediabetes. And it was keeping it from turning to diabetes. And it did. It flipped to diabetes. So now she qualifies, but it's horrendous that happened. Yeah. So I get it. I get why people are doing this. And I think it's a personal choice, really. Don't feel that I'm scolding or I am saying, don't do that, or it's going to, really harm you. Because I'm not saying that. I'm just saying as a physician, I just don't want to go that step of offering that to my patients or encouraging that. But I totally get it. And right. So I feel like it's a personal choice. We all have to make those kinds of hard choices.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Kate in Seattle.
Hello. I could make it really long, but I'll give you the short version and please ask me for details if you want.
Okay.
I started dieting when I was 10, restricting. And then later in my life, just a lot of metabolic stuff happened. Cancer treatment, menopause, banged in during that time. I've done all the diets. I've used to work out really hard, like doing heavy lifting and things like that, which I loved, which is why I related to Gina's story so much. And every diet, every fasting protocol worked until it didn't, and then brought back another 10 pounds with all the original weight. So now I'm stuck at this weight. And I've been on the planet long enough to not care about the numbers that much, but what I do care about is not feeling comfortable in my body. So I've been on Zepbound 2.5 for a year. I take it every 3 weeks. That's the level that I've worked out with my provider who works with Dr. Cooper. And that seems to be great as far as tolerating it with side effects. And I'm seeing other metabolic improvements. Fatty liver is gone. Woo! And A1C looks good. But the thing is, I don't see my clothing size go down. I don't really step on the scale because I don't like the mental thing that it takes me on. And I'm just wondering, uh, is there anything I can do? I'm doing
Well,
mechanical eating
Mhm.
too. I'm trying. It's hard to wrap my brain around eating 6 times a day.
that,
What? So,
well, yeah. I mean, I think, and this will be more information probably, with your provider knowing what they're trying to do here. But a lot of times what we try to do is make sure that the medication's not producing side effects or impairing the appetite in someone like you to the point where you're not fueling adequately, because the fueling adequately is what's really healing the metabolism the most. So
okay.
we want to not jeopardize that by having the doses too high or something. So she might be like dancing with, okay, you're proving you're eating this much, so you can do this much here. But it's the health improvements are wonderful. But I think that if your tolerance is good, it sounds like there's plenty of room to kind of look at the labs, look at which medication strategies are right, and start tweaking things in a way that it's enough for, convincing your brain that you don't need to be storing whatever the extra body weight that
Yeah.
accumulated over the years is for, because also if you're in that mode of like holding on and energy conservation, holding on to like excess body fat that's from old diets and things like that, it's also
Yes.
your metabolism is also kind of sluggish. So then your energy levels will be like a little down. So it's quality of life. So I would talk
That's
to her
true.
about it and say that you feel like you're ready to kind of maybe step things up because you feel more like you're responsible about the mechanical eating. That's the
I have
part.
to be, yeah, I have to be honest. It's
Uh,
really hard for me.
uh,
I feel very worried when um, I feel like I need some sort of measurement to know if I'm eating the amount I should be eating. Um, I'm working with a dietitian
good,
too, and
good.
she literally wrote in my plan, you have permission not to weigh your starchy carbs. As
Oh,
I've been weighing it. I'm like, really? This is 2 ounces. Are you sure? Um,
this is why you're on this medical regimen, because we need to get the fueling is so important. That's the highlight. And so we don't
it's
do anything to like interfere with your
okay.
appetite or cause GI side effects to interrupt your ability to do the fueling. It's almost like, again, like Gina, you have to prove it. Like you're eating.
It's blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you have permission to eat.
There we go.
What? Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. Ice cream is okay. Nuts are okay.
Yeah. Kate, thank you so much for listening and for a great question. And
Thanks for being there.
it's a journey. It's a journey for all of us. Next up, Amber in Seattle. This is a really interesting question, Dr. Cooper. How do we know when we've arrived when it comes to body weight? So, Amber, if you could briefly ask your question of Dr. Cooper, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you all three of you for the wonderful podcast. I really appreciate the message being repeated that it's not my fault. So thank you. So I'm short, I'm 5'3". I peaked at around 200 pounds. I've been on Zepbound for a little bit over a year. For so many years, my goal was just to make it to 150 pounds. I've now made it to 130, which is blowing my mind, but I still look at my body. I still see fat and like there is fat on my body. I've always exercised. I exercise 6 days a week. I've run a bunch of marathons, half marathons. I eat a plant-based diet. Like I do all the things, and I've always done those things when I was overweight too. So the only thing I've changed is the Zepbound, and hurrah, it's working. But how do I know when I'm done?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Well, and it sounds like you're fueling well, right? Because you're not restricting anything. You're just eating and fueling, and you're fueling that exercise. And have you done a body composition too?
I have. I've done a DEXA scan 3 times, like when I very first started, and like everything's going in the right direction. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't done one in 4 or 5 months. I'm probably due to go check that out again.
And you haven't been losing lean mass.
No, I've been maintaining lean
Great.
mass. Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
see,
And I lift weights 2 to 3 times a week.
that's
So
wonderful. Well, I mean, to me, it sounds like if you've been stable, because what the medications do is they remove the barriers to a normal metabolism. They don't normally cause like an artificially low weight or anything, unless someone is not eating and they're losing that lean mass. And so, as long as you're fueling well, your DEXA scan shows your lean mass, you're retaining it. That's probably pretty good indication, even without looking at the labs, that if everything's been stable for a while, just very small incremental decreases in your dose over time is probably a great idea. And then continuing to monitor with the DEXA scan and lab work. Um, I usually have a really long tapering process, like a 2-year tapering process typically, because that allows your body to make up the difference. It's kind of like if you suddenly withdraw a lot of support, your body has to do, a huge amount to try to make up the difference. But if you withdraw a tiny bit, your body can take that step and like, oh, I can handle this, little bits at a time. And I don't know what dose you're on. Are you on a high dose or a low dose?
I'm on 10 at the moment.
And yeah,
so I haven't.
Yeah. So I mean, you could definitely start some kind of a tapering process now, I bet. If you have been stable here for a while, for like at least a couple of checkpoints.
I'm still in losing mode. I'm still gradually losing. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've reached like 128.8.
Uh-huh.
It looks like the whole BMI. I know BMI is kind of a funny thing, but 105 is the lowest BMI for my height. So it feels like this. I don't think I want to be 105. I think that would be ridiculous.
No, what you want to do, there are actually formulas that can give you, but you have to have your lean weight and know that that's good. And like your bone density is not low and things like that. Then that tells you, but if your weight is still drifting down because you are did you say you're 5'3"? 5'3", yeah. I mean, you never know. Maybe your natural weight is a little bit lower, but once it's kind of just stops moving, that's when, it's stable and stops moving. You can start tapering a little, but you have to start thinking about your body image too, because it sounded like you feel there may be something off with your with your body image perception too.
I think anybody who loses a lot of weight has a hard time perceiving what weight they are.
Yeah.
I think that's just.
I think so. There's a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
So you might need to talk to your provider a little bit more about that too.
Yeah.
Amber, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Catherine from Whidbey Island. You have a really good question.
Good morning, team. It's great to be here on your 100th show. Thank you very much for all that. Congratulations, Dr. Cooper. I'm really happy for you. I've been with you a very, very, very long time. And so this is a great triumph. And I love the podcast. It's almost like getting another appointment with Dr. Cooper. And just to hear your calming words is fantastic.
Oh, thanks, Catherine.
So my question is, what impacts do autoimmune diseases such as celiac have on the efficacy of GLP-1 medications? And what are some measures we can take to ameliorate any of those issues?
That's a great comment. I mean, celiac disease is interesting because if you have true celiac disease, I have seen a number of patients that celiac disease being undiagnosed for years caused those famine signals to elevate, because when you have celiac disease, you don't absorb nutrients the same way. So it's almost as if you are on a diet. Your body thinks you're on a diet or starving it. And so same thing with inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease. That's another one that can lead to just chronic malnutrition that's enough to trigger the rebound weight gain that you would see normally from a diet. So that's one of the things. So I think with patients with celiac disease, it's really important to do the protocols to avoid gluten. I mean, it's like popular to avoid gluten, but really the real people who really need to avoid gluten are actually celiac patients. So if you have that, that's important. But then once you do that, I don't really see a difference so much, with the responses. In my personal practice, I take people who have a lot of autoimmune disease, and I tend to try. I'm very cautious about the peptide based medications, because they can trigger immune reactions in some people that are real sensitive. In fact, Andrea, you had that once because you have a little autoimmune, and we had to switch your medication because you were on one of the GLPs that was the least bioidentical. And I think that's why your body reacted to it. So actually, liraglutide is, I believe, the one that's the most bioidentical of the GLP-1s. So sometimes if I have a patient who has a lot of autoimmune disease, I recommend starting with that one because it's least likely to cause allergic reactions or some kind of autoimmune type of reactions. But other than that, I think nowadays most of the newer ones are quite close to bioidentical. They're like 90 something percent. So I don't think we see very many reactions to the newer ones, but I still, as a precaution, use the liraglutide in people with a lot of, as a starting point, and people with a lot of autoimmune disease.
All right. Our next question is from Connie Gapinski. She has a question about selfish brain.
Oh, I love that one.
Connie, go ahead and come off mute if you would.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about this selfish brain condition that I've heard Dr. Cooper talk about a few times. First of all, what sorts of lab tests are abnormal, both routine and specialty tests? And can this condition at all be helped by GLP-1 medications?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yes, the best tests I think for selfish brain would be the fasting glucose and HbA1c. If you see that those are elevated, but the fasting insulin is not elevated, that's one of the key findings. Because what it is that due to what's called cerebral insulin suppression, or they also call it brain pull, where the brain is perceiving a need for more glucose. And so what it does is it sends a signal to the pancreas to suppress insulin output because insulin, as we know, it helps your tissues take up glucose. And the brain doesn't require insulin to take up glucose. So that's why this is called the selfish brain. The brain alters the pancreatic insulin production to lower it in order to prevent the tissues from taking up as much glucose, which leads to a higher glucose in the bloodstream, and the brain can just siphon that off as much as it wants. And it happens in the fasting state. So you would see higher glucose in the fasting state, and it calms down after eating, which is kind of opposite of typical prediabetes and diabetes. So I think that's one of the best markers for it. Often it's caused by, past diets and things like that, underfueled exercise, low carb, fasting. But sometimes it's also caused by hypoglycemia, low blood sugar reactions after eating. And so if that's the case, you have to kind of look at meal testing and glucose levels after eating, as well as insulin levels after eating. But it can be helped with GLP-1 to some degree. But you have to correct the underlying cause, though. So the GLP-1s, again, it is a security signal, the GLP-1 hormone. So it sends a signal to the brain, hey, we're not starving. You have plenty of fuel. You don't have to steal fuel from the rest of the body. So stop messing with that. And that does help. But if you do have this hypoglycemia after eating, that's a constant signal to the brain that, no, you really are starving. So it fights that, potential positive result from the GLP-1. So I think looking at the after eating glucose levels, the response to a regular meal, and we do the 30, 60, and 90-minute are the key time points. And it's usually the 60-minute one that would drop if someone has that hypoglycemia. So, yeah, but the key to it is fueling. Again, it's always fueling. Mechanical eating, fueling the exercise, sleep. There's a weird vicious cycle also with sleep issues, sleep deficits and hypoglycemia kind of fuel each other because of stress response and things like that get triggered. So, and underfueled exercise, as I said, is a big culprit. So, but yeah, I hope that clarifies some things.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Thanks, Connie.
Next up is Kendra. You got a lot going on, girl.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Andrea. We've spoken on Instagram a couple times. So I have Hashimoto's, NASH, GERD. I noticed my A1C is normal, but my fasting glucose is not from the blood work I had back in May. Started GLP-1 about now 4 months ago. Lost 15 pounds. How does Hashimoto's and hyperthyroidism affect these? And will my weight take longer? I was cutting calories, but since I started listening to y'all's podcast, I've been trying to eat when I feel hungry with the
Hey,
GLP-1.
good. And with the fueling, because we can't always rely on the hunger signals because of the GLP-1 kind of inhibiting things, we still need to do that mechanical as well. So even if you're not hungry, but it's been like 4 hours since you ate, got to eat. So maybe being on a regular schedule, regardless of hunger. I mean, we talk about intuitive eating, but that really only works when all the signals are in balance. So the mechanical helps with that. But I don't think Hashimoto's really interferes with, they're kind of two separate problems. Hashimoto's needs to be definitely treated, and the normal treatment is keeping your thyroid levels balanced and maybe monitoring your thyroid antibodies, avoiding viruses because viruses can kind of trigger flare-ups. So, trying to be careful to stay healthy. But I think I have seen some extreme cases of Hashimoto's where there can be a lot of, symptoms, but it's sort of separate really from the metabolic dysfunction associated with the NASH and the prediabetes and all that. It's not really connected.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it shouldn't make your progress any worse having that.
Thank you.
Kendra, great question. All right, Alex Wu is next. So Alex wanted to know, how should we think about nutrition and exercise, especially heavy lifting strategies in conjunction with GLP-1 meds for managing overall metabolic health? Dr. Cooper, yeah, how should we look at working out when we're on the GLP-1s?
Well, again, sleep and fueling are key to, especially with heavy lifting, to muscle recovery, muscle development, muscle retention. So if you're not sleeping enough, your muscles are going to suffer because your IGF-1, which is related to growth hormone, would be affected. If you're a male, your testosterone is going to be affected. So we definitely want to get adequate sleep, adequate daily nutrition, but then little extra things depending on what you're trying to achieve with the lifting. Like say you have a lean mass deficit. If you do have a lean mass deficit and you're trying to build your muscle back up, then your protein needs would be a little bit higher than the baseline needs. But the amount of protein people are suggesting is kind of ridiculous. We don't need as much as what people are advertising out there. A good rule of thumb would be take your body weight and divide it by 2.23, which gives you the kilogram weight. And then you need a certain number of grams of protein per kilogram for just baseline, which is usually around 1 gram per kilogram. But if you're trying to build lean mass or you're engaged in a sport that requires a lot of strength, that should be notched up to maybe 1.2, 1.3 grams per kilogram. It's very rare to need to go higher than 1.3 grams per kilogram. So I know there's some doctors out there advocating like ridiculous amounts of protein. It makes no sense, really. And all it does is it will prevent you from getting adequate carbohydrates and fats in the diet because it displaces those. And it's hard for us to use protein as a fuel. And our muscles really do need it structurally, and our immune system needs it, but we can only handle certain amounts. But that does add up for like a large male. That's a lot of protein. So that means you've got to get your protein with all your meals. And there have been some studies that show having a higher protein snack before bed on days that you lift weights is helpful because during the night, your body uses those amino acids to help with muscle recovery and all of that. And I think this goes hand in hand with body composition testing. And if you can, the DEXA scan body comp is very good because it shows the overall lean mass coming from bone versus, the rest of the lean mass, which is everything but body fat. Or any reliable method really to track to make sure you are not losing lean mass as you're doing the lifting and making sure that you're fueling enough. You could always talk to a dietitian too, because they know what the targets should be.
Okay, next up, Christina from Ravensdale. She wants to talk about menopause. Woo.
Good morning, you guys. Really enjoyed the podcast. I'm a longtime patient of Dr. Cooper's. My journey is really parallel to Andrea's, so I really appreciate her stories.
Sorry.
No, it's been good to hear having you share your story, so I appreciate that. And like Mark, working with Dr. Cooper has kept me out of the danger zone in a lot of areas, so I really appreciate that. And anyway, hearing you guys every week has kept me sane in between appointments. So appreciate that. But I'm going to be meeting with a new primary care physician in about a week, and I'd really like to address some menopause related issues, but I don't want to do anything that will go against what I'm doing with Dr. Cooper. And I worry about that sometimes because, sometimes what we do outside of things that we're doing with Dr. Cooper can mess with those things. So, but I just feel like there's not a lot of information about how menopause issues affect our metabolism. So if there's any information on that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Well, menopause, what happens in menopause is the estrogen levels start, they definitely drop, and it starts in perimenopause, which can be like a 2-year period before menopause. And in people who have low baseline leptin levels, that can impact them more, in terms of their metabolism and their body weight, because leptin is a reassuring security signal for the brain, and estrogen enhances the leptin signaling in the brain. So when we lose the estrogen, then we lose a little bit of our leptin signal. But if you have really good leptin levels, it doesn't really make much difference. But if you have very low and you're like, oh, I have low leptin. So if you have low leptin, then you're going to be more impacted by that. And estrogen has a very favorable impact on metabolism. So taking estrogen in the form of like the patches and things, that actually is favorable. The problem is if we still have our uterus, then to prevent endometrial cancer, you have to also take progesterone, because progesterone helps prevent endometrial cancer when you take, which is a risk if you take estrogen by itself. If you've had a hysterectomy, it's not a concern. You can just take estrogen without the progesterone. But the issue is that most progesterone formulations have been shown to increase risk of insulin resistance, weight gain, prediabetes. So that's where we kind of have like, well, it could be a trial, like, let's just see if you get away with it kind of thing. If you're a person who didn't do well in the past with birth control pills and things like that, probably you'd have the same issues with the hormone replacement with the progesterone. So if that's not in the history, the form of progesterone that's the least metabolically unfriendly is called prometrium, or it's also referred to as micronized progesterone. And that is a common form that's used. It's a pill, but you would want to double check that's the type that you're being tried on. And then usually estrogen in the form of a patch is safer to take in terms of like risks of health issues and including blood clot risk and stuff. But I don't think there's anything wrong with doing a trial and seeing how the body reacts to it. But there's always that chance that the progesterone can trigger, worsening of metabolic issues. And that could easily be seen on lab work, and you would feel it too, because you'd feel kind of bloated. It's kind of a PMS hormone. So you would feel kind of those type of symptoms. But progesterone often is used also in the form of like the Mirena IUD or creams and things like that, or topical patch. But the one still that has the least chance of the metabolic disruption is this prometrium micronized progesterone. So it would be a good starting point.
All right. Great question. Next up is Cordy from Greensboro, North Carolina. Cordy has a question about getting drugs from Canada.
Hi, team. Thank you so much for all that you do. I am a patient of Dr. Cooper's in my head because obviously I'm in North Carolina. I have a great primary care physician, but I have a question about getting the medication from Canada. I would like to avoid the compounded medications, and you've kind of addressed it with the tariffs, but my insurance is covering it up to $25,000, and by it they say all weight loss medications. My letters to them telling them that this is a metabolic optimizer have fallen on deaf ears. So
Mm.
I am at a loss to when they stop this coverage, and I am hoping that the tariffs are gone by the time I need to potentially purchase it from Canada. But if you could provide some insights into that process or directions, that would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Curdy. Now, what medication and dose, if you don't mind saying what you're taking, because I could tell you the least expensive way to get that.
Okay, I'm currently on Zepbound 2.5, and I've been on it for about 4 months, and I've kind of plateaued. So I'll be going up to
Why not?
five
Yeah.
next week. Um, so
Yeah.
that's
So,
where I am.
knowing that, and this is kind of our little secrets from what we do in our practice, but why not now? It's getting so crazy. You kind of have to tell people how they can get this access. Um, but Lilly Direct has the Zepbound in all dose forms in a vial. It's still expensive, $499 a month. But you can get every dose for that price from Lilly Direct Pharmacy. And that's true for, all insurance, whether you're insured or not insured, or you're on Medicare or Medicaid, it doesn't matter. But as far as Canadian options go, it is more cost effective to get it from Canada as long as you're not at the higher doses, like 10 milligram or higher. So if you're at the lower doses, what's great is in Canada, you can get something called a quick pen, which is an adjustable dose pen. So it's not like our pens here that are like a single dose where you just do one single and that's it. This is more like a pen that you dial the dose, and there are multiple doses within the pen. And so sometimes to get around it, we have to prescribe a higher concentration because they're almost the same price no matter what the dose strength is. So we prescribe a higher concentration of the medication, and then we provide the information to the patient of the number of clicks of the pen that correlate with their dose. So that way it's possible to get the cost down to like under $300 a month, especially at the lower doses. But once you get once the dose is up to 10 milligrams, it is less expensive to go straight to Lilly Direct at that point. So you're not saving at that point. But I don't know how it works where you are, but in Washington State, it's up to the employer whether these meds are covered or not. And so we can't, if you're on an individual plan through the exchange, you cannot get coverage. If you're on Medicare, you can if you have certain health conditions. If you work for a company, the company has to be self-insured and have, I think, 100 employees. I don't remember the number. And then it's up to the company to opt in to the coverage. So it's a very bizarre kind of system. But I think that might be unique to just our state. I'm not sure how it works in the rest of the country. But I'd keep pushing on them about it and see if you could get it covered.
Yeah, it's covered, but only all weight loss medications, which is but they've thrown the GLP-1s into as well as all weight loss
So they're
medications.
saying they won't cover weight loss medications now.
No, they're saying that you have a $25,000 lifetime
Oh,
maximum
lifetime,
on all.
Oh.
Yes,
Oh, I
not
see.
per year. That's per lifetime. Oy,
correct.
that
Oh.
sucks.
And is that an insurance you're going to be on for your lifetime?
Um, well, it's with an employer, so
She's hoping to keep
um,
that job.
so
Well, by the time that comes around, maybe there'll be some generics available. You know what I mean?
to decrease the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But at the current price of $1,500 per month,
Yeah.
that's basically just 2 years of
Yeah, and
coverage.
that's if they're charging you that full price, they're not paying that price. So you might want to find
Right.
out, what do you mean by what goes into the 25,000? Is that, your portion and what is your portion really, because it's not the retail price.
Okay.
Find that information out.
Yeah.
And
How
then,
are they deducting that 25,000? What's their math?
yeah.
My girl math would be different from theirs.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
I see why you're worried.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Courtney.
Okay. Next up, Dorothy, if there's any way that you could condense the question a little bit, that would be fantastic because the question's really good.
Sure thing. My question basically is that I have a metabolic problem that's absolutely related to my menstrual cycles. I had a baby. I afterwards went down to a healthy weight without dieting or anything and held there until my cycles came back. And then the weight started pouring on. And I got the stereotypical, well, you're in your 40s and it's normal to put on weight. But I went from a healthy weight to obese in 9 months. And that's not normal. So I've had a bunch of tests and they keep telling me everything comes back normal and within limits. So I'm kind of looking for, what else should I be looking for beyond what an endocrinologist and my regular doctor are looking for? And they've given me birth control and Zepbound, which has at least stopped the weight gain, but we obviously haven't figured it out. So looking if you have any ideas.
Well, we were just talking about how progesterone, when you take it, it can affect things. Progesterone is high, though, during pregnancy, so I don't think it would be that, but it makes me think something with your cycle is triggering a reaction maybe to the progesterone in the cycle. But so it makes sense to try the birth control, and maybe with the birth control trying to err on the side of one that is the most metabolically friendly version, which is the progesterone form, and that is drospirenone, it's called. And so you want to it's the generic form of like Yaz or Yasmin. That type of progesterone is weight neutral, where the others are not. So if you might want to talk to your doctor about, could they switch to that if you're not already on that? But lab work would be really important to look at and try to figure out what is really going on, like with your insulin levels, your glucose after you eat, your blood sugar levels. If those could be dropping at all due to maybe a high insulin spike, because it sounds like that much weight gain, there's something specific that's causing it. And it may be sort of a coincidence that it's with when your periods come back, because certain things in pregnancy, they actually improve. Like, so some people in pregnancy, their metabolism improves, especially in the last half of the pregnancy, because during the last half of the pregnancy, ghrelin levels drop a lot. And during the pregnancy, oxytocin is very high, and oxytocin is very good for metabolism for certain types of metabolic problems. So it could be that as you were trying to return to your baseline and you lost those benefits, whatever was wrong before, really amplified. Often you'll find it related to a low blood sugar insulin imbalance.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Vanessa from the Netherlands has a question about blood pressure and Mounjaro.
Hi, love your program. Thank you so much for inviting me to ask. I have Mounjaro, yet I'm not I don't have type 2 diabetes. Of course, in Europe, we only have Mounjaro, Zepbound. So I've been on it since November of 2024. I had high blood pressure. I've lost 60 pounds.
Wow.
In about 10 months. But I've noticed that I get very dizzy. I notice I've been monitoring my blood pressure, and it's going really down. It's really, it might be 90, 70. I have a lovely general practitioner who is just a sweet thing. And I advise him on the GLPs, and they just came out in November. So he doesn't know much about it. So I'd like to know, that whole process and what people do. But I heard you answer this before, because I heard you say that you have to taper that off. You can't just stop it.
Well, and are you still on a blood pressure medicine?
I do. I take a beta blocker mix, but I've halved it. He asked me to halve it.
Good.
I'm still really quite a low blood pressure.
Well, the great thing is that these medications, because they are metabolic and they target that metabolic system, they do reverse aspects of metabolic syndrome and cardiometabolic problems such as high blood pressure, usually cholesterol problems, and along with the prediabetes and other things. And so it's not just weight that they influence. And so it's very typical to have to reduce or come off of blood pressure medication when you've been on these medications and they've done some correction with your metabolic system. So the medication that you would want to come off of is not the GLP-1 or the Mounjaro, it's the blood pressure medicine because you no longer have high blood pressure, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, and there is a risk of not doing that because if I think that we're seeing some reports where there's some concern about a vision issue that's been observed in some reports, but not others with the GLP-1 medications. And it can be a serious condition. But I feel, this vision issue is due to an abnormal low blood pressure during the night. And I feel that a lot of people that are on these meds, their blood pressure is not monitored closely enough, and their blood pressure medications are not reduced appropriately during the course of the treatment. And so they are left with abnormally low blood pressures that could set them up for vision issues and kidney issues, because our kidneys need a certain amount of pressure also to stay healthy. And not to mention the energy levels can drop and the dizziness. So the thing to do is closely monitor the blood pressure. You've half the blood pressure med, report back to your doctor what the new numbers are and ask, is it okay if I just go off the blood pressure medicine for now and keep monitoring? If your doctor feels it's appropriate, and that would be a normal thing to do.
All right. Well, I think that's going to have to be our last question. What I would love to ask all of you to do, though, is take the question that you asked if we didn't answer it today, go to the website, it's fatsciencepodcast.com, and then submit the question there. Make sure you leave your name and where you're from, and then we'll use it in a future mailbag so that Dr. Cooper can get to that. It's been so amazing to spend time with all of you. I'd love everybody to come off mute if you would. And if you have something you want to say to Dr. Cooper or the group, raise your hand and I'll call on you and we'll just spend just a minute or two this. So does anybody have something they want to say to Dr. Cooper or to the group? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Yes, Christina.
I just congratulations on 100 episodes. I really enjoyed it. And, I'm obviously from the area and been a patient of Dr. Cooper's for years, like the two of you, and really appreciated everything you guys share. And thank you so much for doing this. I've shared the podcast with a number of friends and hopefully they're getting a lot out of it too. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? I'm scrolling between pages to see. Anybody else want to say anything? Yes, Kate.
Just to thank you for the podcast and for all the hard work you do. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Kate.
All right. Anybody else? We're going to do something really fun at the end. You know how Andrea, and she came up with this, no diets. Didn't Andrea, you invented this, right? No diets, no agendas, just science that makes you feel better. Feel better. We're going to have all of you come off mute now, and we're all going to say that tagline together so that the show will close out with that. And I'll set it up like I always do for Andrea. I'll say, so this has been another great episode of Fat Science. So I'll set us all up, and then we'll all say it together. And if we mess it up, we can fix it.
I mess it up too sometimes.
Yeah. Well, this podcast wouldn't be what it is without this community of amazing people. And I just want to thank all of you for taking time to spend with us and the energy that you put into this. It really is, it's a mission to educate the world on obesity and diabetes. And thank you for helping us celebrate our 100th episode of Fat Science. Well, this has been so much fun. Thanks, everyone, for helping us celebrate our 100th episode of Fat Science.
No
diet,
no
agenda.
Just
Science that makes you feel better.
All right, give yourselves a hand. This has been so much fun.